Hi everybody, we're here to talk about the second stage of hypertufa making. In the previous video I showed you how to put together the basic mix, which was peat moss, perlite and or sand and cement powder, and put it into the mould and then leave it for 3 days to stiffen up or kind of semi-harden. So after 3 days, when you take it out of the mould, it's kind of like this. It's like, should be stiff, but you should still be able to break it kind of with your fingernail. Now, I think actually this, because the weather was cool, and I possibly could have added a bit more cement to this. It's a little bit on the soft side for my liking, but it'll give you the basic idea anyway. It should be stiff enough to be able to deal with without it falling apart. Now, this form at the bottom, made out of Kingspan or foam insulation or any kind of foam really, that stiff foam that comes in packing as a packing material in cardboard boxes, you could use that too. And you cover it and cut it like this into this shape, so the cement goes down into the corners and becomes little legs. It's sometimes difficult to get out of the mould, and I covered it in cling film because it makes it usually easier. It sticks less to the mould, to the cement. But in this case, because this mix was probably a little bit softer than I would have liked, when I took it out, as you can see, the 2 legs broke off and the 3rd leg broke off. So initially one would think, oh, well, that's a waste of space now, what am I going to do with that? But actually it's very easily repairable, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So I have the 3 legs there, and all you do is get a bit of cement, a spoonful of cement. There's just about a spoonful in there. Add a little water to it to make it like a thick paste, about the consistency of pouring cream. A little bit more. As usual, when you're working with cement powder, always wear your mask because it's a very fine powder and you really don't want it in your lungs. It's not good for your lungs at all. Okay, so that's a little bit, probably a little bit wetter than I would have liked, but the great thing about cement is that it's very forgiving. It's actually quite watery, that you can see it, but it'll still work. I could add more cement to it and make it a little bit thicker, but I'm not going to bother because I want to show you how simple and how easy and how really you don't have to be. So this is my leg. I have my leg, my broken leg, and the bottom part of it, which is going to attach to there. I'm going to dip it into the cement. So it's kind of like that. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? And then I just literally put it back where it was attached. Press it down and leave it. And the next one, do the same with the next one. And so on. Make sure it's firmly in place. That one's a little bit wobbly. See the way, actually, I had a brush now or something. What did I do with my brush? got a big brush. Anyway, I'll use the big brush. So I'll put a bit there as well. Put it on both sides because it's a bit watery. If it was a bit thicker, you could just do with one side, but because it's a bit watery, I'll put it on both sides. And then just squish your leg back on. Don't press too hard or you'll break the whole thing, but make sure it's quite firmly attached. And okay, that's good. And that's it. And then you just carefully cover the plastic over without moving your legs that you've just attached. So just cover it with the plastic so none of the moisture can escape, and just put it away to the side for 2 or 3 days. The longer you leave it, the better, really, because the longer you leave concrete, the stronger it gets. So ideally, really, I should leave that for a week, you know. But 3 or 4 days should be fine in our current weather. Same with this one here now. What I can do with this one is this little bit of watery cement that I have left over here, I can add a bit of peat moss to it, and a little bit of sand for extra strength. Give it a mix. This one came out of the mould and the leg broke off it. Oh, this I made a year ago. But even now, after a year, I can still repair it. So I can add making leg because I kind of like it, and see, it doesn't stand up properly. So I'll just make a leg for it. So all I do is mix that together as I showed you, peat moss and a bit of sand, and just kind of mix it to a thick consistency so you can mould it. And just mould it round the leg so it's roughly about the same height. It doesn't really matter if it's a bit higher. In fact, it's better if it's a bit higher because you can always scrape it back after it's hardened. If it's not the same height, if it's shorter, then you'll have to keep adding bits to it. So make it a bit higher rather than shorter. And just kind of make sure it's firmly attached all around. And then do the same thing, just cover it in plastic. For about a week. 3, 4, 5 days, up to a week is fine, or even more if you want, but the longer you leave it, the harder it will get. So if you want to scrape it back, then I wouldn't leave it any more than, I would certainly check it after 3 or 4 days. So that's that part of the puzzle. As I was saying before, after 3 days, go and check your molds and have a look, see how they're doing. So I made that one that I just showed you that I repaired after 3 days, and these other 2 I also made 3 days ago. This one came out of the mold. I made it in a bread tin. You can see it's a kind of a bread tin shape, and I made little legs. But I made it in the bread tin, and I didn't put the foam in it with the little legs, I just put it right down to the bottom of the mould, so it had no legs. And then after it came out, after 3 days, I just like I did with that one there, I added little legs to it. And I can feel them now, they're quite firm. So they're firm enough for me to check whether it'll stand up and whether it's even. And yeah, it is. A little bit of a wobble on it, so when it's a little bit harder, I'll take a little bit off one of them and see. It's fairly thin, this one, so I think it probably could do with a few more days, a couple more days, to get a bit harder before I do any more work on it. Because actually there, it's quite solid. So, because if it's not firm enough, then when you start scraping at it with a scraper or with a knife or anything, you know, trying to kind of file it off and take off the rough edge, take off edges and things like that, you know, then it can get a bit too crumbly. So leave it until it's quite firm. And I definitely think that could do with another couple of days. Probably due to the fact that the weather is not quite as warm yet as it could be. So we're going to wrap that one up and come back to that another time. This one, like all those ones, I made on Sunday the 28th of March rather. And this was a much thicker one. The walls were much thicker and the base was much thicker, so I think this will probably be stronger. So hopefully it'll just slip out. Yep. And yeah, it already feels quite, although I can still scrape it with my fingernail. So it's a little tiny bit soft. I didn't put any legs on it. But when it is ready and it's firm enough to be worked on, then you can see when it comes out of the mould, it's quite, because it's up against the plastic and because the cement is a little bit wet, it has the shape of the kind of plastic in it, you know. And to give it a more authentic kind of stone-like look, I go over it with a wire brush, and that just takes that smooth kind of look off it and gives it a more authentic roughness. And all that powder which comes off, I usually just keep it and put it in with my next mix. So that's a little bit soft for me now. I think I definitely must, because of the weather, you know, it's a little bit cool as yet. So I would definitely leave that another day or two. I would like it to be a little bit stiffer. I mean, I could work on it now, but it'll just be a little bit easier perhaps in a day or two, you know. The great thing about hypertufa is that you can leave it for a long time. You can leave it until it gets incredibly hard and you can still scrape it back, you know. So, but hopefully that gives you some indication as to the process and where it's going. The other thing, of course, too, is the drainage hole which I made. It's easier to kind of make when it's a little bit soft, so maybe I'll poke that drainage hole right now, just to and I think I might even give this one legs, actually, like I did the other ones. So, but I need to mix up the same colour because I don't want it to be a completely different colour. So I might do that tomorrow. Just just give it one more day to stiffen up a little bit more. Okay. So, oh yeah, one final thing before I go is that, see this mold, and I have mentioned before that it's not a good idea to have your molds the same width on the top as the bottom. And also not a good idea to have your molds made of ceramic or really stiff material where you can't press it or bend it in any shape, you know, to get the interior out. And because it's all the same shape on the top and the bottom, because it's not wider on the top, it creates a vacuum. So, like, this is really difficult to get out. I'm really pulling on it with a lot of force, as much force as I can muster, and even though it's lined in plastic, it's still tearing the plastic rather than coming out. So keep that in mind, that the molds really need to be wider on the top. Oh, see? It's just completely torn all the plastic, and the whole side of it has demolished, and it just still refuses to come out. So, yeah, not a good idea. That form is like, or that mold is completely useless. So, yeah, so there you are. So, that'll do for now. Thanks for watching, and join me for the next episode. No, I think I'm going to have to demolish this to get it out. Okay, that was fun. The thing is, I want to get it out before it goes completely hard, otherwise I'll never get it out. Okay. So, that was a total disaster. Look, it's still quite soft. Crumbles, but it wouldn't come out of the mold. So, okay. Lesson learned.